I'm Park Howell, and welcome to the Business of Story, where I consult, teach, coach, and speak on the applied science and bewitchery of brand and business storytelling, so that you can clarify your story to amplify your impact and simplify your life.
I thought it was just a stupid picture of a pig in the ocean. But after hearing that story, I had to have it. Now I wasn't just buying a picture. I was buying a story. Story literally made the picture worth more money to me.
That's what businesses are about. People buy brands. People buy stories much more than anything else.
I work with a lot of big enterprise companies, but let's just say I always tell folks, drop the PowerPoint, close your laptops, start with your story.
If you want people to get engaged and you want people to act, you have to tell them an emotionally powerful story. That's with great characters, it's with uncertain outcomes, and it's with high stakes and drama.
All business strategy is a story.
So, folks, let's bring some of this all-star cast that you're going to be hearing at STORYco here on October 25th. And with us today, let's start off with Kathy. I mean, ladies first, Kathy Klotzkast, one of the funniest storytellers, marketers, brilliant minds, and something that she and I, two things that we shared, I give her credit every time I use it, is her jargon monoxide. Everybody loves that, and I hand that off to her. And our equal love for Silicon Valley, one of the funniest shows ever written. Kathy is right in the middle of Silicon Valley doing her story marketing work. Kathy, welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks, Park. Always fun to be here. Yeah. You know, Silicon Valley, it's so true. It hurts. The truth hurts.
And you see that all the time. By the way, we've also got Robert Rose on the line here too. So as we're sharing and talking about what will be coming up at the STORYco conference, Robert, you may be, jumping in on this too. So Robert, welcome to this portion of the show.
Oh, thank you so much. Where Kathy brings the funny, I bring the gravitas. How about that?
Oh, I love it.
Yeah, and you can have funny and gravitas at the same
exactly.
time. Yes.
Well, and Kathy, you come from very much of an improv standpoint. So we're going to be improving here because we may have a few others pinging in on this particular recording session. So stay tuned. But in the meantime, Kathy, you guys both just got back from Content Marketing World. It sounded like it was an amazing event. Why don't you all were just sharing some insights on that. How is that going to be a little bit of a launch pad for what we're going to be presenting here October 25th, if it is?
I don't know, Robert, you want to?
Absolutely. I can. Yeah. Let me jump in. And, so for me, first of all, we could not have picked a more buzzwordy title for our little conference here, STORYco. And the whole idea of storytelling, Park, this, is it's got a bit of a buzz around it right now. And, especially as it pertains to business, marketing, communications, what we're doing out there from a marketing and communications and advertising perspective, it seems to be about storytelling these days. But when you start to break it down, and I think one of the things that we've done with this lineup is to be able to start to break it down into what's meaningful, into what is actually worth figuring out for communicators. And from my perspective, one of the things that we've noticed at CMI, and certainly I've noticed in the client work that I do, is this idea of truth, right? What is truth these days? It comes up time and again in our research to say that one of the reasons that storytelling and creating content is so hard for business is because, quite frankly, the public trust in media is at an all-time low. And while that certainly is sad for our culture, and we can have a whole conversation about that from a marketing and communication standpoint, I think it's a brilliant opportunity for us to become the interesting source of trusted things from our consumers. And so in order to do that, we've got to introduce trust and truth, the tension, and transform what it is we do in marketing into something that can actually become that source of interesting things to our consumers. And so I think from my perspective, it's like I want to offer up this architecture of how we can start to look at those three things as a business and start transforming into something that can take advantage of where we are in the world right now.
So am I hearing the 4 T's of storytelling: trust, truth, tension, and transformation?
Well, no, I'm not
Or did
going
I
to
just come
I
out
am not
that
going to such a ridiculous alliteration part.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
It couldn't help it.
You know, it's something along those lines for memorability's sake. But yes, it's really, for those who are familiar with storytelling, it is going to be the architecture, certainly where Kathy comes from. She's going to look at that and go, oh, right, this is, what I live and breathe every day. But for many in the business communications, we are trained as marketers and communicators to not think about things like tension and to not think about things like creating, expectations around trust and changing beliefs and those kinds of things, which are core to storytelling, but not necessarily core to business communication. So I'm hoping to bring a little bit of that architecture into what I'll talk about at STORYco.
Well, you two have been doing this for an awfully long time. And even though it's a buzzword now, a lot of people have been jumping on the brand and business storytelling train. Yet my biggest concern with what I'm seeing out there is there are a lot of sort of false prophets, just pounding on the desk saying you have to tell stories, but very few of them actually show you how to do it with the tips and techniques. Kathy, you have been brilliant at that. Well, both of you have been. And Robert, you've been doing this since you were baby in swaddling clothes in marketing. I mean, you basically, you know what I'm saying?
Oh, no. When the wise men brought us both gifts, yes, that's how long we've been doing it. I think Robert just said it really well. I think the heart and soul of storytelling has always been the truth. That's always what it is. And you ask anybody who is a practitioner in this stuff, and Park, all of us, it's the heart and soul of a great business story is the truth. And so, as somebody who actually ran marketing for many years and has been doing comedy and improv for 25 years, yes, I dated myself there. It's always interesting to me that the truth part of it seems so evasive to some businesses. It seems like it's hard for them to get their arms around. And I think, Robert said it well. It's like we are in this crisis of trust. I mean, we look at the Edelman Barometer every year and it falls precipitously. We look at alternative facts. We look at this world that we're living in, just 24/7 news cycle. And I think that, people look at trust as being in short supply and facts. And I think the best stories, we are talking about stories. Get your stories ready. But we bandy about stories all the time, to your point, Park. And we never really explain, all right, there's different levels of storytelling. And at the heart of everything we do has to be this kernel of truth. And what is it for your business? What are your values? What do your customers care about? And who are you as a company? And it goes beyond your why and your origin story, but what is the truth for your employees? What do they believe? What is the truth of the pain your customers are facing? What is the truth of your failure? And God forbid, we're all so scared to talk about our failures as businesses. Oh my gosh, I'm fallible. I made a mistake. Yeah, we all do. Got news for you. If you're living and breathing, you made mistakes. And I think now more than ever, we have a chance to resurrect trust. And that's going to take a different approach to storytelling. And, humanity is something, if you come from improv, and I know something you appreciate, and I know Robert does, it's like you've got to uncover the human core of your message, but you cannot get there if everything you talk about misses the human, you're not hitting that Abraham Maslow hierarchy of needs of your audience. And we're so afraid to go there. I think we have to. And I think the next gen of storytelling really has to get raw and real, and it has to still can be professional, but I call BS on all this, failure story that's, we made a mistake in our product architecture. Oh, stop. That's table stakes. You're going to have to go deeper about how you got something wrong, how about you had to pivot, how you shipped a crappy product, and let's get real. And I think storytelling is due for this, wave of something new, something real. It's got to go deeper.
So this lineup that Daniel Lemon has pulled together for STORYco, just amazing marketers, content marketers, and storytellers across the board. And we are all tasked with a 20-minute presentation. A lot of us are going to, maybe all of us are going to be rolling out new information, some new content that we've got. But what has impressed me about the lineup that he set up is these are folks that are doing it every single day, so that the audience is going to come away with actionable tips, things you can use. We're not going to be telling you about storytelling. We're going to show you how to do it. Kathy, what will you be rolling out? Something new? And do you have a tip for our listeners to kind of give them a little tease for it?
Sure. I think it's really not new, but I think it's super helpful and it kind of gets glossed over today. And what I'm going to really be focusing on is this idea of breaking down silos and walls, internal fourth walls and external fourth walls. It's marketing. This may come shocking to a lot of people, but marketing is really not, they're stewards of the story in as much as everybody in the company is a steward of that story, of that company's story, and great stories come from everywhere. So marketers must not be bottlenecks. They've got to get out of the way and take these walls down internally to finding great stories and lifting them and celebrating them and telling them externally. And they've got to co-create stories with their audiences. So we're going to talk about ways to take down the wall also with your audience, and how can you co-create a story and give it lift, because when you co-create something, you increase the emotional investment, and we are 7 times more likely to share a story, 7 times more that we co-created because we feel invested emotionally. And, get a story out there. A company can easily just get a story out there and ask their customers, how would you finish the story? What does it mean to you? What is our brand story as you're living it, as something that you've experienced with our brand? What has it meant to you?
Mm-hmm.
And
Is it finding then that common ground with your audience, so they're co-creating it, they're a part of it then, and you'll show them some actionable ways to do that?
We're going to talk about some actionable ways to do that. And it's also going to be, and this is where the reality check of marketing happens, is marketers are going to have to let go a little bit. And we're not going to be able to, we don't call customers and go, hey, here's our brand guidelines. So within the brand guidelines, but it's like, because you know what, that's some crap. And customers will laugh and say, we define brand relevance. So let me tell you what we think of the story. And marketers are going to have to start to let go a little bit. But I think that's where it gets interesting, because your customers will write a better story, I am convinced, than anything that you really could conceive, because they're going to be the reality check to what you say your brand is.
Great. Well, I can't wait to hear it. Robert, how about you? What's some of the content that you're bringing in?
Well, I think it's going to feed right off of what Kathy just talked about a little bit there, which is this emotional investment, which I think is truly the heart of what we're talking about here. In many cases these days, when I meet with clients and talk with them about what it is they're doing to, differentiate, or the content they're creating, it comes down to facts. And so there's this false narrative, if you will, forgive the pun, that facts will win the day, and they won't. In order to get to truth, we have to change a belief. And so changing beliefs has to come from the emotional side of the equation, because a fact doesn't change beliefs. And so this is just the classic Homer Simpson when he said to his daughter, "Oh, honey, just because I understand doesn't mean I care." And so
Absolutely.
That is where we have to get to. And so one of the things I want to talk about is, how do we start to architect, whether we're creating a tweet, a Facebook post, a blog, a white paper, a book, or an entire brand, what is the architecture of that story, so that not only people will believe the facts that we have to say, but will care. And so that is a pressure test. And so if we can pressure test these, it's a 4-part framework that you can start to architect your story, and then pressure test and say, okay, are we actually getting to something that people will believe in? And one other just tactical, I'll sort of tip off the first one, which is put a person in it. I call this my one tweetable moment in my presentation, which is, if you want to tell a story, you put a person in it. Nobody wants to hear the story of industrial manufacturing. Or
Exactly.
They want to hear the story of a person. And so that's the real key.
Absolutely.
Hey, have you two seen that really amazing political ad out now for the Dean Phillips for Congress campaign out of Minnesota? Came out last Tuesday, has gone viral. It's Bigfoot, and he is trying to track down Dean Phillips' arch rival, Eric Paulson, who's been a 5-time incumbent. in Congress, but he never does town meetings and his constituents can't find him.
Oh my
and
gosh.
he takes more money from PACs than pretty much all others. I think he's sixth on the list, but they did this absolutely brilliant commercial with Bigfoot looking for Eric Paulson, because Bigfoot himself is amazed that nobody can find Eric Paulson. So I just interviewed Patrick Hunt of Hunt Atkins, the agency that created it. And in fact, his show was on just before this show. And he talks about the same thing that you two did just now about finding the truth. And in this case, they could have gone after Eric in a lot of different ways, taking the big PAC money, his voting with Trump and so forth. But instead, they said, the real truth about Eric that we've seen for 10 years is nobody ever sees him. So they go out in this spot and they go to find him. And where do? They have Bigfoot camp out in the lobby of Big Pharma. And sure enough, he's got like a 1990 era's video camera, and he shoots this grainy footage of Paulson walking through the library or the lobby there. And it's absolutely brilliant. But when I asked them, what is the core of the spot? It's the exact same thing you two said, finding the truth. The truth is this guy represents you, but is completely inaccessible to you. So what better way to do that than to bring in Bigfoot? And if you haven't seen the spot, highly recommend it. Great spot.
Yeah, it's exactly it. The facts don't matter. What you believe about the facts is the truth.
Yeah, and you deliver that through emotion.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. I think we also have a rare sighting here of Mike Ganino. Are you on board here?
Yes, speaking of Bigfoot, I've decided to crawl out of the woods here. Hello.
There he is. The man, the legend, Mike Ganino.
Mike!
The greatest cue there to join is, hey, Bigfoot's out there. Well, here he is.
We found him.
Well, I got your note that you were having some interweb problem with some Airbnb, so I can only picture you up in the Pacific Northwest, out in the mountains hunting Bigfoot. And so it's great to have you here.
Yes. The Wi-Fi connection can be brutal out in the woods, as you know.
Mike, thanks for being here. We're covering everybody that's going to be presenting at STORYco, trying to give a little bit of a teaser of what's going to be happening for free, the most invaluable free advice anybody is going to get, October 25th in Los Angeles. And so welcome to the show. What are you going to be talking about? Because we're all kind of rolling out some new content, I believe, at this conference.
Yeah, so I'm excited. The biggest thing I'm going to be doing besides my 20 minutes is taking a ton of notes, because I'm such a fan of everyone else that's speaking, and I've gotten to see a lot of the folks there. So I'm going to be taking a lot of notes personally, but when I'm on stage, I'm going to be talking about, the way that other people create stories. There's such and it's one of the reasons I love that the conference is called STORYco and not storytelling, because there sometimes, and I've heard, the folks on the show today talking about, it isn't always about what you're telling people. It's also about what they're experiencing, what they're creating their own. And I think that's going to be a really cool through line for our whole event, is that this isn't about how to just tell a better story and get people to buy your product or come join your company. It's about really listening to those stories. And so for my specific spot of it, I'm going to focus really clearly on how do you actually do that specific thing. So in addition to my work around employee engagement, I am a communication and performance coach. So I work with organizations and CEOs on public speaking, on leading better meetings, on how to connect with each other through what we say and do with each other, because everyone is always creating stories as we're talking. And I think we make the mistake of thinking, oh, I told a story, but that doesn't mean the story you thought you told is the one they received. And so how do you make sure when you actually are communicating with people that you're sending the right message, or what can you do about that? So I'm going to really focus on that. How do you create engagement in your conversations, in your communication? How do you fire up people with all the stories, with all these ideas that you've uncovered? How do you actually make sure they're landing, and how do you connect through that? So it's going to be a little bit of story, a little bit of improv, a little bit of public speaking class, all mixed in one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mike, do you have one tip for our listeners right now to kind of tease them into being out there on October 25th?
Yeah, I think the biggest tip, this is really fun. I just did this. I'm in Toronto actually today when we're recording. And I just did this with a group here, is think about the next time you go into a meeting or you're going into a one-on-one conversation or something like that, really think about what would you do with your body to send a different signal. So we often don't pay attention to the entire story we're telling people. We think, well, these are the words I said to her about, the vision of the company, or during her orientation or during the interview. But the story we're actually telling people, the story is communicating, is through our whole body. So think about how an actor would use their body to say, hey, I'm really open to this. I really want to have this conversation. Or what would happen if you went into a room and someone's hands were under the table and the whole time they were talking to you about how much they cared about you? It starts to make you tell a different story. So what I would say is between now and the date when you show up in Los Angeles with us, start playing with that a little bit. Change your posture, change the way you're sitting, change the way you're breathing, change where you sit in a meeting, and then start to see if the stories that other people are creating about you don't shift as well.
Oh, that's so interesting.
Love that.
Yeah.
You know, when I'm talking to folks, sometimes I will cross my arms, and it's not. I'll think about are my arms crossed right now because I'm like repelling what they're telling me, and I don't like them, or I don't like what they're telling me. And more times than not, it's no. This is just a comfortable posture for me. And yet, I know that tells even, subconsciously, the person telling me their information, their story, whatever, is like, oh, look at this jerk. He's just blowing me off. But you're so right.
Yeah.
And it happens so often. I mean, it's one of the ways, as Kathy knows for sure, and actually a lot of the folks on this know, in the improv world, when we do improvisational theater, it's one of the ways we create characters. It's one of the ways we communicate with each other in a scene because we don't have a script. And it's one of the ways we communicate with the audience is by changing the way we walk, changing the way we stand, having a lean, having not a lean, moving our body language, shaping our head. And every single one of those decisions communicates a different story about who you are and how you feel. And I just think so often at work, I really believe that culture is about communication and relationships. And I just think we often think we're telling a great story, but we don't think about the entire package that story is being delivered in. So I'm excited to dive into that.
Oh yeah. And can I say how excited I am? Because Mike and I are going to do some improv. Yes.
Nice.
Imagine my surprise.
Who would have thought?
That's going to be awesome. Mike, I got a question for you. Well, for all of you, who is your favorite comedian that uses physical humor the best? It could be past, present. Can't be the future, but past or present. Do you have one? Because I have one in my mind that I just think is hysterical purely through his physical humor.
Kathy Klotzgast. That's my answer.
Oh, very nice.
Checks in the mail, my friend.
No, I think my answer would be, I think one of the people who was genius at it and at the time was really forward thinking for what a woman could do on television is Lucille Ball. She's one of my favorite comedians. She's one of my favorite actresses. And I think she was changing things. I mean, so many things. And I just think she's such a great physical comedian.
Mm-hmm.
She was brilliant. Kathy, how about you?
Oh my gosh. I would say, I think Kate McKinnon is genius with the way she just looks. Because Mike hit it on the head. We have this thing called silent tension in improv, where just with the look, we say so much.
My wife has that.
And you know it. You know that look. And her facial expression is she's heightened it to an art form. And as far as guys, there's so many wonderful. I'd say like Keegan-Michael Key, who I think is just genius at the way he uses his whole body and his voice dynamics. I mean, he uses everything. And what's brilliant about performance is that nothing goes to waste. Your voice, your tone, your pitch, your body, everything, a look. And the way he holds tension in his body, I think he's absolutely genius at it.
And we don't have to be genius at it on stage, but a little bit can go a long way if we're just paying attention to it.
Oh, yes. Absolutely.
Robert, how about you?
So I'm going to have two. I mean, I could go on about comedy. I grew up around comedians with my family having a comedy club. And so I have a particular fondness in my heart. I've never been a comedian, but I certainly have a fondness in my heart. So I'm going to go with two straight stand-ups. And I'm going to go with a new woman who I think is just absolutely brilliant in the way that she uses her body and physicality on stage, which is Eliza Schlesinger, who I think is just hysterical. And just, it's subtle. The stuff she does on stage is subtle, but there's so much that she does with how she uses her physical presence is just fantastic. And then the man that I'll mention is Sebastian Maniscalco, who I think is, he just makes me belly laugh every time I watch that guy. I mean, he's just classically funny.
Well, there are two right there I've got to look into. I'm not familiar with either one of them. I go way back. I go to Buster Keaton, who was just brilliant at it. But one of the funniest bits I think I've ever seen, and I laugh so hard still, is Sid Caesar playing the general. Have you ever seen that?
Oh, yeah, of course.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely brilliant. But
Yeah, absolutely.
Brilliant. And can we just say also Chris Farley, who got, God rest his soul, like talk about physical comedy and using everything.
Oh, sure. Robin Williams.
Yeah. And I think it is important to go back to, for our listeners and those that will be attending STORYco, is you don't have to be at that level. It's just really paying attention to how you physically tell your story. So, Mike, I'm really looking forward to meeting you for the very first time and hearing your content and getting back with all of you here in a few weeks. So I'm looking forward to it. I've got to run now. We're going to bring some more folks into the show, and I appreciate you guys being here on Business of Story. We'll see you October 25th in LA.
Thanks, Park.
Thanks, Park.
Thank you.
Now, folks, joining us here on Business of Story is Carrie Wilkerson and Leslie M., who I will also be honored to be presenting alongside at STORYco on October 25th in downtown LA. The Los Angeles Theater Center is the most invaluable free advice you are ever going to receive. And I think we only have about 70 seats left. So if you want to be joining us in this afternoon and evening of amazing business and brand storytellers, then now's the time to go to storyconference.info and save your seat. Ladies, welcome to the Business of Story.
Thanks for having us.
Hey, Park. Thanks so much for letting us be here.
Absolutely. Now, Leslie, you're coming to us from Toronto. Carrie, where are you located?
Texas.
Whereabouts in Texas?
So I'm in Dallas-Fort Worth. I am, home of the Texas Rangers, home of the Dallas Cowboys, barbecue, Longhorns, all the big things.
Well, that's what's so fun about this conference coming up on the 25th is we've got great professionals coming from all around North America to be there in LA. And so, Leslie, let's start with you. What are you going to be covering? Because our directive is to roll out some new information, some new content that audiences haven't experienced before. We're doing it in 20-minute sort of TED Talk like bits, and then everybody after the conference gets a chance to hang with us during a reception and answer questions and dig a little bit deeper. So, Leslie, what are you going to be bringing to the stage?
I'm going to talk about something that is incredibly near and dear to my heart, and I'm actually writing a book about it. And it's the concept of swagger. But it's the redefinition of what swagger is, because most of us believe that swagger is this external manifestation of badass confidence. It's showing up like you're perfect at all times, you're bulletproof. And I am going to argue that swagger is not that in any way, shape, or form. But it is, in fact, the authentic manifestation of exactly who you really are and the ability to hold on to that true self in the face of all the psychological crap that's going to come for it on a daily basis.
So you've got a bit of swagger to yourself. You've come from the advertising world. I love your website, Combustion. And on it, you're wearing the T-shirt, Fly Your Freak Flag High. So I would imagine there's a bit of swagger in everything you do. What is it you do, and how did you get to doing what you do?
Well, my background is pretty unusual, I think. I mean, a lot of speakers, we come to this path by a very circuitous route. I was actually a singer for many years, a performer, and then I worked in the film industry as a script editor and a script doctor. And quite by accident, I was pitching a TV show concept to a production company, and the guy who owned the production company said, "You know what? You should be on camera." I was like, "Oh, clearly you're a genius. Of course I should be on camera." And they hired me and gave me a TV show. So I then worked on camera for about 5 years. That was living in the UK. I lived in the UK for many years and then moved back to Canada where my skills were completely useless. So I talked my way into the advertising business because I'm such a passionate communicator, and ended up being a creative director at Canada's largest ad agency. But the inspiration came from watching people in the corporate world suffer. I saw the suffering of people who needed better skills and more support and a greater understanding of what their role was in this corporate environment. What were they suffering from? They were suffering from not understanding what creativity was, having to talk a really good game about it and produce it, but not really understanding what it was, and being terrified to have to go back to the well over and over and over again because they had no process and they didn't believe in process. The pain of lack of collaboration, how everybody just were in their really, really entrenched silos and almost saw the other as the enemy, which broke my heart, and that they did not really understand how to communicate their ideas profoundly. And in the ad business, that's all you got. Like, you could take a pretty crappy idea, and if you can communicate it hyper effectively, you're going to get people on side. And it broke my heart to watch, an art director who was an introvert, who had worked so hard to communicate some gorgeous idea. And then when it came to standing in front of the client, could not articulate, his or her truth. It just broke my heart. And I realized that the skills that I had, the experience that I had, could probably help these people that I loved and respected so much more from the outside than from the inside. So I quit my job and started a training company.
Well, and it sounds like, they were self-defeating, no process, lack of collaboration, and didn't even know how to tap into their creative selves to create in a profound way. So, I mean, it seems like just a natural thing to come in and try to fix and connect those dots. How does swagger play a role in that now?
What I've always found to be effective, when I started to build training experiences, I did it solely on instinct. I really knew nothing about adult learning at all. I put my hand up, but I know nothing. I'm just going to try and create experiences, the kinds of experiences that I would have liked, because I'm pretty untrainable. I'm a rebel monkey. And one of the things, there was a through line through everything that I ended up doing, which was about helping people to understand their truth. What is the true story? What is the truth of what you bring to the table? Who are you authentically, and why do you keep apologizing for it? I found that people were apologizing for themselves so much, and that when they were almost waiting for permission, they were waiting for someone to tell them that who they are was good enough. And that was the story that they were telling themselves. And I thought, no, we got to break this story. We got to change the story that we tell ourselves and give ourselves permission to be the messy, flawed, vulnerable human that we are, because that is what makes us crazy powerful. It's the opposite of what everybody has been taught to believe. And I really wanted to break that paradigm. And it seems when I talk to the people that I've worked with over years, and I ask them, what did I help you do? What was the through line of the experience, regardless of what I may have trained you on? And everybody said, you helped me to figure out who I really am and to stop apologizing for it, authentically who I am. I was like, yes, I have purpose on this earth,
So what are people going to learn from you on the 25th?
Well, I think what I want them to understand is this reframing, and of how powerful swagger is, that confidence is a byproduct of swagger. They're not the same thing. And swagger is messy, and it's vulnerable, and it's imperfect, and it's much, much more about self-acceptance than it is about self-assuredness. And this big secret that nobody wants to tell you is that's what makes people fall in love with you. That's what makes you irresistible in this world. You think about your own life. Who do you trust? The people who you know are telling you the truth. Who are you drawn to? The people who seem to have a really good sense of self and can be self-deprecating about it and playful and stand up for you in a fight and all of those amazing things. So I want to prove to people that the journey towards swagger is worth it, and that you don't need to fake it till you make it. That's not a good strategy.
So Leslie, you and I have never met. We're going to meet for the first time in person on stage. What tip can you give me right now so that I show up with my own special swagger?
This might sound counterintuitive to the authenticity message, but because one of our biggest fears is that we might screw up and people might judge us, my piece of advice is screw up and do it fast, even if you have to do it on purpose. There was a study that was done in the 60s called the pratfall effect, and they proved that people who had an axe drop, spilled a cup of coffee on themselves, tripped over, spat food out or whatever, and how they handled that was capable of drawing people towards them and building trust very, very quickly. So I say, do the very thing that you're afraid of happening, get it out of the way so that your brain, the fight and flight part of your brain, stands down a little bit, and you realize the worst thing you imagined happening has happened and nothing bad resulted.
So you're telling me I can use my bumbling to build my personal brand and influence. I love it. I've been trying to hide it all these years when I can actually put it to work for me.
Break out, Park.
Well,
be your badass bumbling self.
Well, I'm so excited to hear your presentation on the 25th. If you want to learn more about Leslie, visit her over at combustionco.com. That's Leslie Elm. Leslie, thanks for being here. Carrie, let's bring you in. Carrie Wilkerson. All the way from Dallas,
I'm so excited.
Texas.
I get to bumble. I get to bumble and mess up and embrace all those things. I'm excited.
Isn't that the best thing about this right now? Okay. So what are you going to be bringing to the party on the 25th?
Well, I for sure am going to be bringing some Texas swagger now that I know how.
Oh, come on. That's inbred in Texas. I mean, you can't help but bring Texas swagger, right?
They really do have their own unique brand here. It's kind of funny. And they don't care if you get it or not. They don't even care. They're all right if you make fun of it. So I'm going to be talking about leadership while we're there. I also get to MC, so I'm super excited about that. Y'all are going to get more than one eyeful and earful of me. I get to be some connective tissue, so to speak, which is fun. But we're going to be talking about leadership as an inside story. And I love, as I'm listening to Leslie, I love hearing how these are just intuitively weaving themselves together. It's going to be a really incredible event that we're putting together, not even on purpose, meaning we're not sitting around a round table saying, hey, what am I going to talk about? What are you going to talk about? How do we make that mesh? It's just because of our own personal work and how we get in the bread dough with people that a lot of this is going to go together beautifully. So we're talking about leadership, not being a position, not being a promotion, not being a paycheck, not being a number of likes or shares or comments or being viral, but leadership being an inside story, how we create leadership and influence from the inside out.
Oh, that's going to be great. So in addition to emceeing, you're going to be sharing some of your insights on this. And the Barefoot Executive. Tell us a little bit about your background in the writing of the Barefoot Executive, and what does that even mean?
What does that even mean? The Barefoot Executive was born out of the fact that I wanted to work at home, and I felt like I had an executive brain, and I knew I wanted an executive income, but I didn't want to have to put on the stilettos or the suit or go to somebody else's corner office. I wanted to create a life and a business based on my terms and my priorities. And so that's exactly what I did. So I wrote that book, long time ago, almost 9 years now, but I've been actually a Barefoot Executive for 21 years, creating a full-time executive income and influence while I'm actually sitting here right now barefoot in my little town in Texas and creating a business that serves my priorities instead of trying to wedge my priorities in between the cracks of somebody else's business. So that's pretty much the mantra of the Barefoot Executive. I like to say, I believe we were the first lifestyle-based business book that hit the market. It was everything I wanted to have when I started my business that nobody was writing about yet. So that's what a Barefoot Executive is. It's a good starter primer for if you want to take what's in your brain and create income out of it, or your skills, or learn how to work more remotely. That's what the Barefoot Executive is about. That's part of our early platform.
And the question for you that I can kind of mull over the next 2 weeks before we get acquainted on the 25th is I am somewhat of a Barefoot Executive in that I work from home, but I also have an office building here in Phoenix where I used to run my agency out of, got away from the agency world, and now it's just strictly business of story. So it's myself and some, freelancers, the 1099 economy, but I enjoy working from home. And yet one of my biggest concerns, Leslie, would be the missing of the people and that interaction of folks and so forth. How do you overcome that when you're working from home and you're just not in that day-to-day, mano-a-mano, face-to-face interaction with executives?
Yeah, I think you have to be intentional and you have to be aware. So the fact that you're aware that that's an issue helps you be intentional in correcting it. And things like this, things like video conferencing that didn't exist 21 years ago when I started working at home. It's why I created the website and the brand Barefoot Executive back in the day, was because we all felt like we were the only ones.
Yeah.
And now, of course, we have video conferencing, we have FaceTime, we have Facebook. Social media was something I was very resistant to. I only went there for the water cooler.
Yeah.
I went there to connect with people outside of my office. But the fact is, I can work 10 times as hard here in my office without all the scheduled meetings and all the in and out and all the people that, honestly, sometimes your staff loses their decision-making ability when you walk in the door. And so having some sequestered time is
Leslie's
better.
nodding there, by the way. She's going, yep,
Yeah. So that being said, you have to be intentional. You have to connect with other like-minded people, which, we, the three of us are part of a secret society of like-minded people that really we connect a couple of times a year and on the road. And that's so helpful to us in what we do. And I would say business owners need to do the same way, whether you're really connected with your chamber of commerce or a networking group, or you belong to a mastermind where, business coaches run masterminds, whatever that looks like for you. You also have to connect socially meaningfully. We had this big discussion recently. I host a party about 3 times a year at my house, and it's very casual. It's, hey, come bring something, hang out with us. Everybody who's busy and professionals, we just want to see each other's faces a couple of times a year. It's not catered or expensive or whatever. It really is a human relationship touch point, and it becomes a very meaningful thing. And now we're in the 3rd and 4th and 5th annual of like the Labor Day thing or the New Year's thing or the whatever, that we didn't really intend for those to be things. It was just, we looked around and said, we're in our mid 40s and we're seeing our friends never right now. How do we make that happen? But I think being self-aware and being intentional when you work for yourself or on the road or at home, it really, really helps with family and friends.
Yeah, I was speaking at Brand Manage Camp last week, and there's about, I think, 13 of us. And the common theme throughout to the brand managers, about 400 in the audience in Vegas last week, was that don't let Facebook of the world and LinkedIn, and Zoom sessions of the world overcome or be, cancel out the one-on-one, actually physically getting together, which seems like it's more important now than ever. And one of the big reasons why I'm really looking forward to the 25th too, because we all get a chance to mingle and share our insights on storytelling and leadership development and creative development. But maybe most importantly, at least to me, is that we actually get to meet each other one-on-one. I'm really looking forward to that.
Face to face and flesh to flesh. That's the best relationship capital that we can invest.
Yeah. Well, Leslie and Carrie, thank you so much for being here. I look forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks. Any last parting thoughts for our listeners before we wrap up?
Go ahead, Leslie. She looked like she was.
I wish that I could be in the audience. I'm sort of going to get to be in the audience for this because this, when you look at the roster of speakers, this normally just saying, like, I'm shocked that I don't consider myself to whatever. I think that people would pay thousands of dollars for a conference seat to see these kinds of speakers. This is the quality of speakers that you're going to get at this. And I'm so excited to be in everyone's company. But really, honestly, if you are listening to this and you are in the Los Angeles area, you would be nutso to not take advantage of it, because it's a once in a lifetime opportunity. If you care about business storytelling or developing the soul of your own storytelling, you've got to show up. It's going to be amazing.
Yeah, let me address the fact that it's free, because I think everybody has that inner skeptic about it.
Oh yeah.
Here's the deal, guys. We all make really good money to go speak individually at our own client events. We are putting this event on purpose for a couple of reasons. Can I just be super transparent, you guys? Are you guys okay with this? We're doing this to work on new material. We're working on this to get really great footage and video for our own marketing purposes in front of a live audience. And we're doing this in order to collaboratively work with some other people that we don't normally get to work with because of the way our contracts work. We are on the road alone most of the time. So you come and enjoy the fact that we are paying to put on this event. We're even throwing a reception at the end, drinks and mixing and selfies and book signings and all those kind of things. We are not selling anything. We are not pitching from stage. We are not asking you to sign up and do anything. We really just are gifting you this ticket and saying, come fill a seat engage with us and learn on our dime this time, because it's so rare. This is not going to happen again, really.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing. It's a win-win across the board, because you as a listener, if you show up, you're going to be doing us a favor, giving us an audience that we get to roll out some new material on. But you are going to be the first to hear some really incredible, insightful trainings from some of the top leaders in the country. And just so you know, it took me like 5 different sessions to get them all on this show. That's how busy everybody is traveling around doing their things. So
yeah, we're not new speakers. I don't want people to think we're new speakers. We're not.
No.
We're old.
That was the most entertaining part of this. It was, poor Park would say, okay, here's 12 dates. Can anyone make no.
Sorry, we're booked. We're working.
But you did it. You pulled together in the name of story. So that's awesome.
We did.
Carrie and Leslie, thank you so much for being here. Again, look forward to seeing you all in a couple weeks. And I'd like to thank all of you for listening to this edition of The Business of Story. Again, if you want to save your seat, go to storyconference.info. There's only, roughly 70 or so seats left. It's going fast. I think the venue holds, a total of 200, 250, something like that. And it'll be on Thursday, October 25th from 1 to 6 p.m. at the Los Angeles Theater Center. Really, really cool old bank building, I guess, in downtown LA. So we're all looking forward to presenting that. And if I can be of service to you prior to that, you know where to find me, businessofstory.com. And if you like what you're hearing here on this show, or you know of someone that wants to go, feel free to share this episode and the storyconference.info website with people. Maybe you're clear across the country and you can't make it up, but you've got friends and family in LA that you think would benefit. Be sure that they know about it so that they can be in the theater. We would love to meet them. Return next week when we will have some more amazing story artists like Leslie, Carrie, and the rest of the gang from STORYco on the business of story. And until then, remember, the most potent story you will ever tell is the story you tell yourself. So make it a great one. Thanks for listening.